Good afternoon and welcome to the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live here from Dan Germano's race shop in Macedon, New York. Excited to be here for the first time going live in a race shop for any of the racing programs that are here on Finger Lakes 1. Excited to have everybody tuning in with us here through the course of the night. We're going to be busy having a lot of conversation about the 470 Thunder Series with champion Dan Germano. Dan, thanks for opening the doors for us, man. It's awesome to be out here. And then we're going to be talking with some of the event organizers, and then we're going to be talking with your own son, Adam, as well, through the course of our night here. Let's just start right off the bat and talk a little bit about what we've got sitting behind us. We see the giant RAR racing engine hood scoop, and over there, right behind them, we've got the race car itself, and with that car, you ended up pulling down a championship this year.
Yes, we did. It wasn't another one, it was the only one.
The only one. Well, so far, that's right.
So far, that's right.
I like the way you word it, so far. So in terms of what we've got to look forward to next year, are we going to be back with this same car?
Yep.
Let's look forward before we look backward. We're going to be with the same car again next year.
Same car. We're going to do some maintenance over the winter, a few items that need a little attention, but pretty much it's going to be running the same car, freshen the motor, freshen the tranny, and go out there and try to do it all over again.
How difficult is it to win this championship? The 470 series, you've got a very narrow window, just like any other ET type racing program. So you've got to nail that. You got to be consistent. You got to have all the technology in place. How tough was it to pull away a win? And then on top of that, now that you've done it, how much of a target's on your back to knock you off that pedestal?
Well, I can't really say about the target part because we'll find that out when we get back there and race. But I mean, everybody at the track that we race at, everybody's kind of buddies and everybody helps each other. So, you know, it's all in fun. Most of the guys that we race with, they're all right there. Everybody's within, a tenth usually, and it's a really tight field. It's kind of funny. I could tell you a little story. Bob, who's sitting here with us, a couple of years ago, it came right down to the final round, and him and I raced, and he won the round, and that gave him the point to give him the championship.
Wow.
And ironically, this year it comes down to the final round, and him and I are in the final again, and I won the round, and that gave me the point to win the championship. Jeez. By 1 point. So that's how tight it is, And, I mean, here's Bob and I racing. We wouldn't even been racing that day if it wasn't for Bob taking our wheelie bars home and fixing them for us. We broke them testing the night before, and he fixed them for us so we could race the next day.
So when you say fixed them, did he go through and just build a whole new set?
We broke an end off, and he welded new bolts on, or nuts on the end to receive the Heims joint and put everything back together, so we were back racing.
Do you regret that at all?
It's kind of ironic,
You regret doing that at all?
No, not at all.
But that's how it is. Everybody helps each other,
Well, that's been the recurring theme in the conversations that I've had with John Pelican and the conversations that I've had now a couple times with Jason Oldfield, is we've heard frequently that this is one of those tight-knit type programs that we see more or less wherever we go in racing, but sometimes it gets overly competitive and people forget that the fact that they were having fun at some point, we started chasing some of that serious money, and this sort of hasn't lost that per se. We see a lot of the same relationships with some of those guys that run 360 sprint cars and things like that, and I kind of like hearing those stories, but at the same time to lose the championship by a point, and the year before it was decided by a point, it sounds like the 470 field is so competitive.
There's so many cars that are so close, and pretty much everybody that drives in it is a good driver, so anybody can win at any time. Mm-hmm. And that makes it fun, makes it fun to watch.
Does that happen a lot where somebody gets hot and they win a couple weeks in a row or a couple dates in a row and then they just don't win again? Or is it a revolving door on victory lane where you see different guys in the finals on a regular basis and you see different guys, different winners lighting the lights?
I think we had like 4 or 5 different winners this year, didn't we?
Yeah. Last year was different.
Yeah, we had a lot of different winners. I mean, a year ago, Andy Gregory kind of ran the table. I mean, he won quite a few. But even that, he won them, but it was close a lot of times. He didn't win by much. It was people were right on his heels. So.
Yeah, and then he come out this year
And then this year he just
win
couldn't
around.
seem to put it together, So it's so tight and so close that anything can happen. No one's ever really out of it. That's the thing that's cool,
Right.
It just.
Yeah, nobody runs away with it. It all
Yeah.
stays competitive and even.
So tell me more about the 470 Thunder Series. You guys have a competitive following. We've established that. You've had a number of different champions now. You're beginning your 5th year. So tell me more about the 470s and how many different tracks do you actually get out to, or do you focus just at Empire?
Well, it started out at Empire. Basically, it started out where there was a lot of cars that weren't fast enough to run the Quick 8 programs that they had at Empire, and there was a lot of cars that didn't want to go into the Super Pro program where you take a high dollar car and you'd have to go and run for $500 and run 6-7 rounds to win the race.
Right.
So a lot of people just stayed home. So that's how I actually came up with the idea, was we could take cars that had 632s, maybe one shot of nitrous, or guys with bigger motors could slow them down and run the 470, not have any electronics as far as throttle stops, delay boxes, the old-fashioned heads up, and come out and compete and try to win. The purse that we put up at the time started out at 1,000, now it's up to 1,500, and it really brought a lot of people that were staying home because there was no fit for them,
Right.
to come out and race. Guys that were gonna basically quit racing because there was nowhere for them to fit in.
Sure.
Finally found a place to fit in, so it turned out to be pretty popular.
In terms of pull that in a little further. There you go. We'll get you a little more clearly that way. In terms of the electronics and things like that, you've been able to keep that out of it, and you've still got this impressive turnout so that you're racing without all of those add-ons. Is the division continuing to grow and following that trend where it seems like there's more of a movement to pull some of the electronics out among more of the purists is the best way to say it?
Absolutely. I mean, the drag racing started with no electronics, and it got into the electronics because it made it more affordable at the time. Because in the beginning, drag racing was more of a cubic dollar, who could go the fastest. So they brought in the bracket racing, which allowed people to run these electronics to be competitive and not have to spend a whole lot of money. But then that seemed to be losing interest in it, I should say, to some of the older generation like myself, where the old school stuff seemed to.
It takes the driver out of it when you have too much electronics,
Right.
In terms of those electronics, what was the most important one to make sure didn't come in?
Throttle stop.
It seemed like that was.
Yeah, when you see a car leave the line and fall on its face and then pick back up, it just.
And a delay box too.
Yeah, I mean, it
way.
It gives them a little bit of an advantage that takes away the element of driver to machine to driver to machine. And that's how it originally started years ago, and that's why I started the 470.
How tough was it to get a rule book put together that everybody was willing to buy into?
It wasn't that hard at all. No, we just put them in place. There was a little conflict of what type of cars, and they should allow the throttle stops, but I just felt firm on the fact that they were not allowed. I had somebody send me a thing the other day about a Corvette Roadster with doors that work. Could that run? I said no. He has to be enclosed, because an open body has a little bit more visual, and it just gives them an advantage that I didn't want to implement to the rest of the guys in the class.
Sure, most of our cars, the driver sits back so far and you're inside your cage and your vision is not good at all. So if a guy has wide open view, he can play the finish line, get out ahead of you and play the finish line, and you're at a big disadvantage.
So in terms of, we've heard John Pelican and we've heard Jason talk a lot about how it's so much easier to race from behind because you know that you're going to be able to close up on the guy instead of trying to get to the finish line first. Now, I feel like that's a little bit of a reverse of what we're talking about with the open cockpit car.
Absolutely. I mean, it's
So
you
it's
two in
easier
your
for
car.
So it's easier for the open cockpit car to instead get down the track, and then he knows if you're coming, how fast you're closing. He's
He
got
can
room to get
hear
back
you
on it.
better. He can see you better.
Interesting. I never even thought about that perspective of it, but sure. I mean, it makes sense if you've got that open cockpit that you're going to be able to hear better, and in turn you'll be able to react sooner than somebody who's locked in and all that sound and everything is staying right around them.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's why
when-
there's no dragsters in the class.
When we used to get together and discuss how to set this up, there was a lot of people trying to get me to let the roadsters in, and I just absolutely said no. They no open-bodied vehicles because of the advantage they have as far as sound and visual. It wouldn't be fair.
In terms of the bodies, everything else is allowed to be aftermarket, though. It just has to have a
Oh, right.
roof and fully
Yep.
enclosed. Gotcha. That's interesting. I haven't been to any of the 470 interval races before or anything like that, but the last couple of weeks we've been talking a lot about the 470s, and then our initial conversations with Jason and John have been about 990, and there's so much more to it than what you're given on TV. NHRA just wrapped up their season as a whole, and the national tour guys that race heads up. Antron Brown won the championship there. Ron Capps won the championship in funny car. Jason Line won in pro stock by 3 points over Greg Anderson, and then Gerald Savoy won the pro cycle stuff. All that stuff's run heads up. There's so much more to drag racing as a whole beyond what you see on TV. That's so much more competitive and at times even so much more confusing. But with some of these different, getting to know a little bit of this more in terms of the interval racing and some of the stuff with the technology being pulled out of it, I can see where those purists and those guys that, like you said, that were on the fence, that weren't going, that don't like the technology, that like where the sport used to be before it got so high tech and evolved. I can see where there's definitely some interest there because there's a whole lot more power put into the driver's hands than what you'd have otherwise.
And it brings it down to affordability. I mean, 470 is still a fast class, but it's a manageable class where you don't have to break the bank to run it.
Right.
You can take a big motor, slow it down, or you can take a small motor and give it a little shot of nitrous and run and be safe and have fun and be competitive.
And it's just one stage of nitrous, just one shot?
If that's what you need to run the number. I mean,
it all depends
we've
on what
had
you
small
use.
blocks trying to run it with big shots. We've had big motors like myself that I have to take a certain amount of timing and everything out to slow down to run it. So we've been to both extremes.
You won the championship 2 years ago.
2 years, yeah.
2 years ago. And you were still the tour promoter then? Or was it in somebody else's hands?
No, it was mine.
It was yours. So when you say the big motor, how big is the big motor in terms of what you've got?
Well, mine's a 746 with...
That's all. That's all.
It's got 1,553 horse just on motor, and it's got 4 stages of nitrous, which I don't need any of them, but at least I can back it down enough to keep it safe and run the number. And believe me, it wasn't easy to do. I mean, when we first started this class, I figured, no problem. We'll come out and fix it and make it work. These guys came out swinging, and they were very, very competitive right out of the gate.
And what's your car got?
Mine's a 638.
Yeah. So you're running small then.
Small compared
Well,
to
he
them,
was
yeah.
a 565.
Yeah, we just switched from a 565, and we were having to hit it with so much nitrous that we were just, killing the motor. So we upgraded to it. We picked up Par as a sponsor, and he hooked us up with a 638. And it's so much easier on the motor, on the car, even on me in the car. It's just everything's easier with having that little bit more power. I mean, my son Adam there does all the tuning, and Bobby's son Bobby does all the tuning for them. And I mean, even they talk about how it's just so much easier having a bigger motor with a lot of power. You don't have to kill the thing to get it down the track and do what you got to do.
Right.
So
what was that nitrous doing to that other motor? Was it just
what
roasting
did
it
we
from the
have,
inside?
Adam? 3 times we burnt pistons.
We melted 2 pistons last year.
Did you save any of them?
There's
to put
one
'em-
sitting
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Sitting right there on the
Yeah,
shelf.
it's sitting over there.
The
Nice
aluminum gods.
Nice pen holder.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about before. we melted the piston, and it left aluminum on the cylinder, and we had to scrub at it and melt the aluminum away, basically, to put a new piston in it to run it.
Yeah,
But-
it's not fun.
What was the block? Was the block wasn't aluminum too?
The block was steel.
It was steel.
The new one's aluminum.
The
The
new
old
block's
one's steel.
aluminum. The old motor we used to spray, the most we sprayed on one system was like 750, between 7 and 800 shot of
Now the
nitrous
truth comes out.
on one stage. And now we spray, the most we've sprayed is basically right around the same thing, but on 2 stages. So basically, you have one come in right at the hit, which is instant,
Mm.
and then you have your second stage come in around a second later, and it doesn't leave as violently, so you can get away with getting off the starting line a lot easier, basically.
You
can
need
spray-
to do it with 2 stages for 470?
No.
No, that's what he's asking, I think.
Yeah, well, I was talking the 565 compared to the
Okay.
638 that we have now.
Gotcha. So I mean, it sounds like even though you've got bigger cubes and more power, it's smoothing out your power band.
Yeah, right now, last year to go 470 with the other motor, we were spraying like 500 shot. This year, we spray a couple hundred, maybe 250.
So like half.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less nitrous, which he likes because that's a lot less money he's paying to fill the bottles every week.
Yeah, and it's easier on me in the car. You know, the car doesn't leave like I'm not getting beat up in the car, you know.
The less power you're making, the smoother things are.
It's not as angry.
Yeah, there's a good word.
it's not as angry.
And my wallet's not as empty.
Everyone knows us at the track as the violent car, because our car weighs. Last year we took a lot of weight off over the winter, but it was 2,890 pounds, and most of the cars in our class, probably the next heaviest one's probably 2,600 pounds, 25 maybe.
But I mean, even with the smaller motor, the amount of power that you run to the track, your power to weight ratio is just insane. Was that one of the reasons why you're lending to being so violent off the line? It just seems like your power to weight ratio is.
Well, we have to make a lot more power than most of the other guys because we're a lot heavier.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks a lot more violent to the eye, but everyone's going the same speed. When we raced Bob this year, one of his guys actually had a video of a GoPro on Bob's car, and you can see him go way out in front of us from the starting line because he accelerates faster.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you just see our car catch right up to him. And it was the coolest thing to see because it really shows the difference in the weight that comes into play.
And you're doing it in less than 5 seconds.
Yep.
Yes. That's the part that's just crazy to me. It's happening so fast. And
It's not seconds. It's not even tenths of seconds. It's hundredths or thousandths
Right.
that we win or lose by.
Right. In terms of the driver's perspective, that violence that we talked about, how hard is it to control that and plan out your pass? Because it seems like it puts a lot more, I don't know, randomness or unpredictability in your launch.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I just once I'm in the lights, I look straight down the track. I pick a spot way down the track, and I focus on that, and I just drive to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
If the car gets, squirrely on you, you lift. It's just if it doesn't get out of shape, you stay on the gas and just drive to that, almost like you're pointing it at that spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do. I mean, how do you do it, Bob? I mean, everybody does something a little different.
Same thing. Basically, you're looking down the track, and if the car does have to change direction, you manage it accordingly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a seat of the pants, if you will.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yep. There's
It
plenty-
almost has to be a reaction thing because in 4.7 seconds, you don't have a whole lot of time to sit and think about what you're going to do. It's got to be a reaction,
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about what this year was like in terms of your consistency and what this year brought about. Tell us about the year at Empire and how the 470 season came into your hands. I mean, obviously there was a lot of ups and downs through the course of that race season that left you with a margin to make up on the last night?
Yeah, well, one of the big things that we discovered, or I shouldn't say discovered, we knew about it, but one of the things we really started working with was weight, ballast weight in the car. Adam got the car tuned to run in the mid-60s and then slowed it down with lead weight.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to be a lot more dependable, accurate way to get to the 471 number
Sure.
that we were shooting for. We used to, I mean, he could tell you more about that, but I think he used to try to do it more with timing, right, Adam?
Well, it was timing, yes, but the big thing that I always did was we used little jets that go in. There's a tube that goes to each cylinder for fuel and nitrous, and inside each tube there's a jet. So you basically, the jet allows a certain amount of nitrous or fuel to go through the line. So we would change the sizes of the jets to make a little bit more power and a little bit less power.
Right.
As well as there's a regulator for fuel pressure. So you can change that to allow more pressure, less pressure. And, you know, say we were going a 472 and we wanted to go a 71. Well, you could try to pull a couple degrees of timing or give it a couple degrees of timing, and it might help speed up a little, but chances are you would have to physically give it more like fuel or nitrous. And, you know, it was all depending on how much air the motor got. It wasn't a for sure thing. It was like an educated guess, basically.
Right.
And with the weight, there's no changing the air mixture. There's none of that. It's just, it's there or it's not. So
Less time with the abacus.
exactly. I would get it close with the tune-up, and then we would fine-tune it with the weight. Really, we did it round to round. I mean, there's no point in being right on the number if you're racing somebody that day is a little bit off. There's no point in pushing the envelope and taking the chance of going too fast. So, you know, if we were racing someone that the last round went like a 477 or a 476 and we just went a 473, then I'm going to leave it the same because, you know, if we race Bob,
Or 70.
you know, you want to be right there. So
470,001.
you don't
Yeah.
want to break out like we did the last race of the year. We went 469 with like an 8. It was 0.02 of a second away from perfect
In the final.
in the
Yeah,
final.
in the final.
But we had won the championship by then, so we kind of just took a shot at it.
Right. I mean, how rewarding is a perfect pass like that? I mean, you're
Oh,
so
it's
close
awesome.
if you can pin that.
Yep.
And that's the way the 470 is.
Oh, yeah.
The guys are just that good.
That
All
made
of them.
my job hard, keeping track of points.
Yeah, poor Amy's trying to.
Last year I had it easy.
Yeah, that's.
When we won, I had a hard time getting to the golf cart to go down to get him because she was in my path.
Mhm.
Now, why was that?
She was excited.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We just
It's a
beat
big
her dad,
family.
and her
Yeah.
and I are hugging each other, and people are staring at us like, "What is wrong with you people?"
Yeah, that's a little funny little story. We had some friends there watching us race, and after we come back from getting pictures and all that, they're like, "We're confused. The people you were racing were hugging your son after you beat them. What's that all about?" You know, and
That's
it's
just the
just everybody's
camaraderie about-
like cheering for everybody. You know, it's
Yeah.
like there's no bad
It
blood.
makes it
you know?
hard.
So it's kind of nice.
Everybody's everybody else's biggest fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
Everybody wants to win, but it's still, there's a lot of camaraderie into it.
And anybody will help anybody
Teaching the
that's
little
there for the
ones.
most part.
Yeah.
He's like anxious to
Everybody
talk
can
over.
appreciate how hard it is to get there, I think, that's out there racing. And, you know, sometimes you can do everything perfect and still lose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, sometimes it's just a luck thing, you know?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. It's good to be good, but it's better to be lucky
Yeah.
sometimes.
you know?
I mean, just to imagine how close you were to the perfect pass, and you broke out, so it's over. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Doesn't matter how close you were. If you were too
We've
quick,
done
you were
it
too
one
quick.
time
Yeah?
in all of our racing, and it was when we lost to him when he won the championship
Really?
3 years ago.
Yep.
So you had a more perfect.
If they'd have beat me, I wouldn't have won the championship.
And we went a 470 with a 0. Could not have went any more perfect. And it was all decided on
Reaction
Bob's
time.
and my dad's
He killed
reaction
me on the
times.
light, so he beat me at the light, so it was over before we even got 5 feet.
Unless
He
he
was-
didn't make it down.
Well, but I'm
He
saying
was like
that
a
race,
tenth of a
Yeah.
second
Yep.
faster off the starting line from the reaction time.
Mm.
So right there, Bob would have had to go over a tenth of a second slower than us for us to win.
Right.
That's just not happening.
No,
Not gonna
not in this class.
No.
Just not happening. So we talked a little bit about Empire and some of the stuff that we've seen. Where else have you had the chance to run through the course of this year?
We've traveled quite a bit. We went to Cincinnati. We've
I
gone
heard
to
you earlier talking about
Pennsylvania.
Norwalk.
Yep, Norwalk. We went to Virginia. We did okay at a couple of the out-of-town races, and we did not
Pennsylvania.
so good at others. A couple we didn't qualify for. You know, it's a different type of racing, though. That was top Sportsman, and this car that we have isn't really a competitive car compared to the cars that are out there now for top Sportsman. You know, so.
World's a little different down south too.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
a lot of the guys that are out there racing now, you know, for us, probably our best pass that we're going to make, and everything would have to be picture perfect. We might be able to go mid 440s in the eighth. I mean, there's guys out there that are going 4.0s, you know, so you race a guy like that, you're at a huge disadvantage, you know. But it's fun to travel. It's fun to go to these big tracks and just try, you know.
Right.
So,
a
We've
lot of
talked
these
about-
tracks have showed interest in the 470,
yeah.
going to other tracks where they don't even run it yet, right?
Mm-hmm. We got 2 already, right?
Media.
And bringing the
Numidia
series there.
and,
Their series there?
Yeah.
And the new track, Dragway 42 in Ohio,
Mm.
they're both real interested in having the 470 come there.
And it's 1,500 to win no matter where you go.
Well,
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much what we tell them we're doing.
Target anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, is 1,500 the baseline? It's going to go up, or if you don't get enough cars, will
We're
it go
going to
down?
try to get it up. That's our goal, to reach out to sponsors and
Well, that was my next question. If your baseline's 1,500, no matter what, you're going to pay out 1,500 to win. It's not going to get cut, which is a huge
No,
step,
I
regardless
saw
of
that
what.
the last few years. I had to actually pay the purse myself if it wasn't brought in by the gate.
And then the rest of it is set up by just whatever comes in through the course of the day, or have you got some sponsors to help you out?
Well, we had one sponsor last year. We had a few before that. I was so busy last year I wasn't able to get out and get enough, but we had close to enough at the gate to cover the sponsorship. But that's a big part of it, you know, being able to get the money to pay these guys so that when they come, they get paid.
And would you take a race in Ohio? Would you gladly go out there and pick
sure.
up some of these?
Sure.
That's pretty cool.
The nice thing too is you go to a place like that, it's not just our local guys here. You know, if we got half a dozen or 8 guys, let's say, to go from around here to travel to Ohio, you're going to probably get 8 or 10 guys from Ohio to race in
Yeah,
it
you're gonna
too,
make some
because
friends
they're
out there.
not, you know, it's a new thing for them, you know. So,
right.
and then next thing you know, they start racing there, doing it, and there's one in, is it Kentucky, Adam?
Kentucky.
Yeah, we were planning on going there this year,
Yep.
and it didn't work out. We ended up going to Virginia instead. Actually, one of our last race of the year got canceled,
Because it
From
got
rain.
rained out.
and it got moved to the same weekend,
Mm.
so we didn't end up going. But there is another one out there that's, you know, very far from us, but it's popular. Guys like it because if you're not in the NHRA, it's not very. You can't really race heads up, and this is pretty much the closest thing to heads up. I mean, you have to go 470, but you're both leaving at the same time, and you have to get to the finish line before the other guy. And nowadays with bracket racing, you got to put a number on your window, and you don't leave at the same time. So you bring someone to the races and they see 2 different cars leaving at 2 different times, and they're like, what the heck's going on?
Right.
And I got to explain it to them. Well, with the 470, our family comes and stuff like that, and I've never been asked a single question. They just, it looks like racing.
It's like what they expect it to be,
I
Yeah,
mean, you
the
go
way
to
it
a drag
started years
race,
ago.
Yeah.
You expect the 2 cars to both leave at the same time and someone to get there first.
Right. It's a lot different. And again, that leads to, it's no different than go-kart racing or dirt bike racing. There's so many different divisions that people could easily get confused. But the difference
Sure.
is drag racing is one car's still just sitting there. The light goes off and one guy's just sitting still.
Yep.
And then you never know what the outcome's going to be at the top end anyway, because you never know what kind of games are being played. And the guy that's way out in front and then the guy coming off the line too. What about you guys? You guys have a chance to get out of state at all?
We were going to go to Ohio, but I sent my motor out to be freshened, and it turned out to have a cracked crank, so that ended that venture. So no, we didn't have a chance to travel this year at all.
No. Next
we
year?
wanted to.
Next
oh yeah.
year.
Yeah.
We all went to Ohio last year together.
And the year
That was
before.
fun, yeah.
Yep.
Maybe with
It's a
this
lot
little
of
guy,
fun
we'll
when you
get
go
out.
out of town and you got a bunch of your hometown racers are there with you. It just makes it fun. Travel together and cheer each other on.
Mhm.
One thing we should talk about too is that you were mentioning about building up the 470 class. There's so much work that goes on to keep track of everything and do the points and do all that. I don't think people realize how much work that is. It's the guys come each race and just pay their money and race, but that's a lot of work. I mean, it really is. That's where Amy comes in. I mean, she keeps track of all that stuff, and it's a huge job, and nobody's getting paid for that. It's just all because we love to race,
Passion.
and that's, to me, that's just shows how much passion and how much it means to all of us, So I just
I'm watching. Roadrunner's very angry with us right now. Roadrunner just pulled our bandwidth down to nothing, and then apparently they got over it, left everything alone. Things seemed to have stabilized a little bit. I was getting nervous because it was just dumping and dumping and dumping and dumping. But they must be listening. It started to dump out again. Anyway, so I'm recording this locally. So worst case, if anybody's having any problems at home, we'll try to amend that. That was some of the comments where we got guys that are watching. We got a couple Demolition Derby guys that have tuned in to hear about it because they want to know more about the motors. They're asking a lot of questions about the motors because the size of the engines, in their world, they're looking for small blocks that aren't running crazy displacement that are giving them all low-end torque. So logically, when they're looking at the drag racing stuff, they're saying, well, it's all lower-end torque so that you can get off the line and get out as fast as you can. And some of the conversations that we've had, we're learning that's not necessarily the case, especially with the introduction of the nitro into the equation. So when you're looking for a motor in terms of your power band and balancing your power and making sure that you can cover that amount of ground, obviously you're not so much worried about some of the concerns that they have. Like, you're not so much worried about extended exposure to heat because you're only going to run it for 5 seconds,
Right.
tops.
and click it off.
But in terms of some of the other things that you're looking for in your motor, what are you coming to the table and saying, I need to make sure that I have this, 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 and this?
Well, one of the things I learned was, being that my motor was so big, it had so much torque and so much power that when I left the line, I was getting so far out in front of everybody that I couldn't see them, and I couldn't, when it come to the stripe, they'd end up going flying by me. Even though they were still running the 470, I was so far out front, I couldn't gauge it.
Uh-huh.
So I actually started to slow my car down off the line, going from 100 60 foots to like 106, 107. This way we'd stay closer together. That way I could see them, and made it easier for me to try to take the stripe with them and
we
not
are
break out.
We are talking about 6 and 700ths of a second.
Right.
In terms of
Oh,
slowing
yeah.
your car down 6 and 700ths of a second, which is it's just crazy
It's
to think about it.
insane.
And you're doing it without some of the technologies that we see in some of these other
Right.
divisions, which I think is even cooler.
Yeah, it's just basically
Yeah, it's usually just a pop on the gas pedal.
trial and effort and tuning.
It's crazy how that little bit of lift that.
When I first
Split
started, it was
second.
all a guess at the other end. I'd get lucky and lift, and
See,
It was,
I,
it was all done by
with
all
me-
done by seat of the pants and how.
Right,
Well, it
right.
feels like we're about that long.
yeah,
he won't ever let off the gas. Where a lot of guys like Bob,
that's all I had to do in the
They-
beginning was lift.
he sits so far back in the car, he can't see anything, and basically I know that whatever I put in the car for a tune-up, he's gonna keep his foot on until he goes past the finish line, and
Right at him.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty. There's some pretty cool pictures.
Did you follow at all the new world's quickest street legal car over the weekend with Jeff Lutz?
I heard about it a little bit on the internet, but I haven't really followed it.
He turned 587 at 251 miles an hour.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And he could get into it and drive over, I believe, in your words, to get ice cream,
Yep.
it's amazing.
which he's not. He's not driving that to get ice cream. There's no way. There's no way, but still, it's
No, he's not.
And he beat the old record by a chunk. The old record was set in 214. It was 595. So I mean, he was
He was
hauling the mail.
hauling it. Yeah.
It's amazing what they can do today.
They had one guy this year in Ohio. I can't remember the guy's name. You know the car I'm talking, Camaro, that's got the orange stripes on it. The
Oh,
street legal-
Bennett or Benoit or something like that.
Forget the guy's name. He drives it on the street. He drives it to the track and tows a trailer. He travels around for what's the division? It's this one division of drag racing that you have to drive race to race and then run
Oh yeah, you were talking about
over
this
200 miles an
earlier.
hour.
Holy.
And he ran the quickest class at Shakedown this year, and they actually had this thing called the money shot, where you basically gave up one of your qualifiers and you were basically saying, I'm going to take a shot at the money shot, and it was to say you're the
Oh, yeah.
fastest car on the property, basically.
Really?
And he won that. And he drove everyone pulls their car up to the starting line with a golf cart, and he drives it up there.
That's impressive.
Totally.
It's cool. It really is. You don't see that very often. The radiator on the car was probably 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall. It was pitched on an angle like this, and it's amazing to me to see that a guy can do that. I mean, I understand how hard it is to go fast now, and he's well faster than us.
Did you go to school to tune? And did you?
I did not. No.
So what did you go to school for? You were studying broadcasting, correct?
Yeah, I was going for TV and video production,
And
and then I
That
stopped.
proved that last night.
Yeah, I was going for that, and then I said to my dad, I can't do this. I want to work, and that was that.
So in terms of your tuning ability, that all just came from experience, just being
Uh,
around it for so long.
Came working with the guy Pat that you guys
Mhm.
interviewed. I've been working with him for 4 years now, 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Yep.
And he's
He's
as
taught
far
him a
as
ton.
nitrous is concerned, he knows a lot. And he's taught me everything I know about nitrous.
You said he did. He felt like you guys hit on something when he came and started working with the team, and you guys.
Yeah, he definitely made a huge difference as far as teaching Adam, all the different things to do with timing, and we didn't even have an electronic ignition,
Mhm.
or is that what it's called? A computerized.
Basically what we have, I have the ability to look at the computer after we make a pass, and what it does is
That's
there's
the
a
equivalent to the
computer.
black box on an aircraft.
Pretty much.
Pretty
It
much,
records your RPM
Right.
and your speed of your drive shaft, and we have a couple G-force meters for acceleration and lateral, and then we have fuel pressure. Remember I was talking fuel pressure
Mhm.
for the nitrous?
Sure.
And it monitors the pressure throughout the run. And that's very important with nitrous because you want to know where your fuel pressure is at. And if you have multiple stages, you want to know what each stage is at different points in the run. Well, without any of that, you don't really know anything that's going on. It's pretty much an educated guess, but you don't really have much to educate your guess off of.
Right.
If you really watch what they do on that computer in between rounds, it's pretty impressive. I mean, they're adjusting timing on a per cylinder basis. I mean, they might, if this cylinder's running a little hotter, they'll change the timing there, and they try to balance everything out.
Sure.
I mean, when they first started talking about that, I'm like, what? You know,
Last year, it was crazy. This year, it's easy as can be, the most simple thing in the world to me. You know, because last year, we had a 565 with one carburetor and one system, and we were trying to jam 750 horsepower from Nitrous in the engine, and that's just unheard of. So
it wasn't liking it.
we basically, remember I was talking about the jets?
Mm-hmm.
Normally, you would have the same jets in each piston, each cylinder. Well, we started small, and as we put larger and larger jets in, we would see different cylinders wouldn't like it.
Mm.
We would say that they weren't happy.
Sure.
So what we would do, we would basically, if say cylinder 2 was hot, we would take a little bit of timing away to cool it off. The other thing we would do is we would actually change we'd stagger the jets. So we would have, say, 40 for nitrous.
You getting all this?
And then on 2,
Take good notes.
on, like, we had it on 1, 2, and 4, and number 8. We melted number 8 and
Bedroom.
Yeah,
This is the number one
20
fan
to
right
25
here.
people that come every time we go.
Yep.
That's cool.
And like with them and any other, I mean, it's a good time.
How about you? How'd you get into it? Was it family connection that got you started?
Not really. I started racing on the street when I was in high school, and
Shame on you. I never did that.
that's the truth. I mean, I did, and then eventually started racing at the track, and that I ended up doing sand drags for a while, and then I got away from racing for a while, and then when the boys got older, I got back into it. They loved it, and I got back into it with them, and here we are.
Right.
You know, it's. I mean, how many parents can say that they spend pretty much every weekend with their kids all summer? You know, I mean, to me that's awesome.
Right.
So both my kids are on my team. Bob's got the same thing. Both his kids are on his team. You know, I mean,
Nephews,
that's
yeah.
awesome. I mean,
Brother.
I think that this country needs more stuff like that. You know,
Sure.
to keep the families together.
Keep them out of trouble.
What do you
Yeah.
want to say?
But there's so much video game side of things, and there's not so much hands-on being able to work on motors the way that it was. We've talked about that on past episodes about how there's just not that drive or even that opportunity even to get out there and wrench on a motor, because you got to work for 25 minutes or 45 minutes even just to get to the motor to the point where you can mess with it, and then all you have is a pile of wires anyway.
Yeah.
It's still at heart taking air and fuel and making power, but there's so much more to the cars now in terms of electronics and the safeties and the emission regulations that you can't go out and mess with a car the way that you used to be able to in the 70s.
Yeah,
That's true.
You know what's really cool though is when you have a team, everybody has something that they're good at, and it all comes together. I mean, like with our team, Adam is the one that understands the computers and all that technology so well, and he's able to grasp that and do all the tuning. We have Gary Brewer, Richie Liberia, they're our main mechanics, and I mean they know the car inside and out. They do all that. I'm in the car. Adam would never get in the car and drive, and I don't want anything to do with the computer. You know, I mean, it just kind of all comes together. Everybody
Right.
has their thing, and that's what makes it fun, because everybody has something that they're good at, and the whole thing comes together.
Well, it's the same with me and my son.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for my son, I couldn't do it, because he can go in and change all the parameters and all the timings, and I don't know how to do that stuff.
Bob and I talk about that sometimes. Like, we listen to the boys talking. It's like they're talking Chinese. We don't even know what they're talking about.
It's all Greek to me.
When I first started learning about this, when Pat came over one night, and we sat right at the table in the shop, and he pulled up what I was talking about with the computer, how it records stuff.
Mm.
And it's just these different, looks like a line graph. And I
Sure.
looked at it, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, I had absolutely no clue. And that's probably what he thinks when he looks at it. 'Cause I try and explain
Yeah.
stuff to my dad, and he just lets me talk.
I
Then-
honestly
then
have
I
no
stop,
interest in knowing either.
And he looks at me, and he goes, "You're talking in Chinese."
Just make it go.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
Just let me sit in it and make sure it goes.
I want to step on the gas and go fast. That's it. That's my part.
Well, who else do you want to make mention of before we put a cap on it? It's been a fast hour. I mean, we've motored through a lot of topics, and there's a lot of details on the car. Who do you want to make mention of?
Well, for me, I mean, first and foremost, Bob has helped us out so much with everything with this car. I mean, this past winter we redid the entire car. He completely put a whole new front end on. He built us a new rear end. You know, I mean, he's just done so much and been there for us. Pat Budd has helped us as far as the tuning goes with the Nitrous. He's taught Adam everything he knows pretty much. Par race engines, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the 638 engine that we have in the car, and we wouldn't have won the championship this year. I mean, there's just no question about that. But really, all the racers that we race with, they're just all there for us. You know, Andy Gregory, he's taught me so much about driving just talking with him. It's just, I can't really point at one person that's helped us, you know, but everybody that we race with is always there if you have a question. I remember one time I had a bad week and I was all down, and there's a racer, Jim Zakia. He's probably the oldest fella out there racing with us, and I was all down and everything, and he comes over and he puts his arm around me, and one of the guys in the Super Pro class had caught fire and his car burnt to the ground. And he puts his arm around me and he points at the guy's car and he goes, "You see that guy over there? He had a bad day. You're fine."
Right.
See? So
It's all perspective.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what's
it's
nice
just-
about the sport. It takes you take a guy like Jim Zaka. He was a champ in the early
Yeah.
days when drag racing started, and he's still doing it today. So it can go from the youngest to the oldest. I mean, it's a great sport.
How do you keep your reaction times? How do you keep those sharp? Do you practice them?
Tickets.
well, we have a practice
You
tree.
got to
but-
have a clear mind.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
Concentration.
Or just do what he does, get an app and play it on there.
Yeah.
We have a full tree that I'm
Yeah.
always trying to get him to
We have
practice
one.
on. He's got, he has the same thing on his phone. I'm always on him, practice, but
Yeah,
Just
they preach it to us, but
We
They-
don't practice.
he won't use it.
what you were asking me, you know, we have a lot of sponsors on the car that have helped us. I mean, Pure Vape has helped us a lot with money. Printing Plus has helped us a lot with money. We've got quite a few sponsors on the car. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do it. I mean,
Right.
I cannot afford to
NGK.
do this out of my pocket. There's just no way.
NGK too.
Yeah, NGK
They
gives
give
us all our spark
all our
plugs.
spark plugs.
I mean, that
Really?
doesn't sound like a lot, but it's
You're
$3,000-4,000.
changing as much as you said you're
know?
changing them. That's
Every pass
Yep.
they're new, so
It's every
Give
little
Charlie
bit
some.
helps, you know. So
yeah.
Royal Purple gives us all our oil. I mean, it's just it goes on and on and on. So
How about for the 470 Thunder Series? Anybody that you want to make mention of?
Just all of them. All the guys are
All of
great.
them.
I mean, they just all the guys that compete in it, and there's several that are going to be entering into it hopefully this year. I mean, it's a thank to all of them.
Yeah, Andy Gregory has also been a huge help, giving me ideas on certain things, trying to kind of step it up this year. I've been talking to them. I'm working on putting a sponsorship package together to draw in more people and
Sure.
give them some, exposure on their product services. So it's in the works. I've got vacation next week, hoping to get something together for the holidays. But we're open to any type of sponsorship.
How do they find you?
They can contact by email at rjaws@rochester.rr.com or give us a shout at 585-797-7565. We would appreciate any help possible.
Awesome.
Uncle Bob's, I would say, was the
Big
biggest
shot, yes.
supporter.
He
of
was
it.
this year for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Bob's self-storage, they support us really, really well.
Excellent. Well, real quick before we wrap up, I see there's fighter jets all over the place. What's the connection there?
When the boys were small, they, especially Adam, used to love going to the air shows.
Yeah.
So we used to go all the time, and the F-14 was our favorite jet.
Yeah.
So we used to buy pictures and drawings and stuff.
Did you ever get to go in a ride in one of them?
No, but boy, would I love to.
It's got to be just the same, right?
I don't know about the same.
They
but I'd love to
actually-
do it.
They say the top fuel dragster actually accelerates faster.
Yeah.
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 Yep. I've read that, which is
It's
unbelievable.
amazing when you think about it.
The injectors are like a garden hose pouring fuel into the cylinder.
Everybody needs to try that launch once.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right?
Just once.
You ever
I'm
tried
good.
it?
I mean, in a car.
Yeah, he's not a
understand
fan
that.
of dragsters. That's where him and I differ. I want to try that, but
But you never have? Neither-
only in a junior.
Yeah.
I've been tempted to get into a full length, but I got 2 young kids. They give me enough adrenaline.
Yeah. You don't
Couple
wanna-
years, Aim, you'll
Couple
be able to do
years.
it.
Right.
Maybe do an experience, one of those.
Sure.
Yeah, you could get someone to sponsor you.
hmm
You're a lot more attractive than us.
Well, Tom Crewer had actually talked about, letting
Oh, in
me
his
take
dragster,
it for
yeah.
a test. Yeah.
He was a good
But-
friend of ours that basically helped me get the class started with all the ideas, and he passed away a year
Last year,
ago yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Full
was a good
circle there,
guy.
huh? Very cool. Well, guys, is there anything else that we need to hit on that we might have missed through the course of the conversation?
Anything you want to add? What do you want to say?
Leave it to
You need to
Nico.
know when to hit the light.
That's right. I agree. Those are words to live by. No one hit the light, right?
Absolutely.
And the right fuel.
The
He's,
right fuel.
He's certainly been paying attention. Well, guys, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to open the doors and come and hang out and see the shop and see the cars and talk a little bit. As we get further into the off season, hope to do it again. Maybe we can get you down to the studio and
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit more about it as you book more dates and get things to expand. That's going to do it for us here from the Germano Race Shop in Macedon, New York. Episode number 3